Gentlemen, this is Mrs. G coming at you. We are going to talk today about multiplying and dividing fractions. Okay, we've been talking about adding and subtracting. Now we're going to talk about multiplying and dividing. And I wanted to start with just a quick review of multiplication. Okay, what does it really mean to multiply? We know our multiplication facts, but can we go back and just visualize it? And I just did this quick example: 4 times 8. What does it mean to multiply 4 by 8? Well, you can think about that as taking a group of 8 things, okay, 8 smiley faces here, and then reproducing that group 4 times, okay, so 4 total groups of 8, okay, 4 total groups of 8, and what does that really mean to do? Well, it means to take 8 and add it to itself 4 times, okay, we can think about multiplication as repeated addition, 2, 3, 4 times, because it's 4 times 8. Or we can think about it kind of as making groups of things and then multiplying out those groups to be 1, 2, 3, 4 times. So we're talking kind of about groups of quantities, right? Having different groups and making them larger. Okay, that's the basic idea of multiplication. Let me see if I can now help you understand the idea of fraction multiplication, because it can be a little bit difficult to visualize. So let's start with this example here. 1/2 times 1/3. 1/2 times 1/3. Remember in our previous slide we just said it's like groups of something. So it might actually be better. It makes more sense to say 1/2 of 3/4. Okay, instead of the multiplication sign, one way to kind of read it out loud would say 1/2 of 3/4. Okay, so if I have a pizza like this, that's 3/4. Well, I want to take 1/2 of it, right? I want to take that amount that's shaded. I want all of this, but instead of those pieces, I want half of them. If I'm trying to take half of 3/4. Okay, so if this is the bit that's a half, what our final answer when we multiply these would be this part that kind of overlaps. And you can see that down here. Okay, the red piece is here. That means a half. And if you kind of lay it on top of the 3/4 piece here, you can see that what you're looking at is these groupings. Okay, so what group does that represent? Well, now we have 3/8. Okay, so that's visually what's going on when we multiply fractions. You don't have to draw the pictures every time you do a problem, but I'm just trying to help you understand what's going on because it can be a little bit too difficult to visualize. How am I going to write that out? How am I actually going to do the problems numerically or mathematically? Here is a general procedure for multiplying fractions. Okay. Hopefully thus far you've just kind of been listening and taking it in. This is maybe some procedural notes type things you want to put in your notes. Basically, multiplying fractions is, for many people, easier than adding and subtracting fractions because you're not trying to add pieces of the same size. You're simply kind of laying these on top of each other like we did here. So 1/2 times 3/4 is just 3/8, and I'll show you here kind of how that works out. All you really have to do is multiply the numerators by each other. Okay, just kind of multiply across. Remember, the numerators are the top. And then you multiply the denominators across. Those are the bottoms of your fractions. And then always and forever, don't forget to simplify. Okay, don't forget to simplify. Let me show you 2 examples here. If you want to pause and write down those steps, that's fine. But these first 2 examples, you can just kind of watch and follow along. I'm going to have you guys try this one down here. So my first example is 2/3 times 1/4. So really, all I have to do here is say, all right, what's on top? I'll write that in red. I guess what's on top is 2 times 1. Just multiply these across. And on the bottom, 3 times 4. Okay, and you're just multiplying. Okay, 2 out of 12. 2/12 is, I'm not going to say it's your final answer because what do we got to do, guys? Can't forget to simplify. Those are both even numbers, so divide them by 2. And then your final answer is 1/6. Okay, notice my big fancy starred box here says it is not necessary to make common denominators. So just kind of keep that in mind. One thing, let's look on to example 2, that is important to keep in mind is when we multiply, and now we have mixed numbers. Okay, so with mixed numbers, unfortunately, you can't just go 2 times 1 and then 3/5 times 1/4. Okay, you can't just take these separately. What you have to do when you're dealing with mixed numbers is make them improper. Okay, and maybe that's something you want to write down in your own fancy little box. Okay, make all mixed numbers into improper fractions. Okay, that's just a oopsie. Spell that again. Improper fractions. Okay, and I'll walk you through that. 2 and 3/5. Okay, remember we go in this general direction and we multiply here and add here. So 5 times 2 is 10 plus 3 is 13. So 2 and 3/5 is the same as 13/5. That 5 just gets brought along. Okay, I am going to erase that. If you needed to write it down, just rewind for a second. But let's see, we did again. 2 times 5 is 10 plus 3 makes 13 over 5. One thing I want to start showing you guys is that the time sign is the same as the big dot. Okay, those are two different ways to write multiplication as we kind of progress into algebra. They stop using this time sign because later it's going to look a lot like the variable x. So as we get older and better mathematicians, we progress to using a dot to mean multiplication. Okay, anyways, 4 times 1 makes 4, plus 1 makes 5 here, over 4, and we just multiply. 13 times 5, ooh, that's a big number. 13 times 5, write it out to help you understand, just review your math facts. That's going to be 15, plus 1 makes 65. So 65 over 20. What do you notice about 65 and 20? Well, they end in 0 or 5, so that means they are divisible by 5. And you could write, as your simplified answer, 13. If you're not sure where that came from, write it out. 65 divided by 5. 1, 5 subtracts. Then 5 into 15 is 3. So 13 over 4. And that is done. That is simplified. I want you guys to try example 3. Press pause right now. Come on back and check your answer. All right, hopefully you're done with example 3. This one I was pretty easy on you guys. That should be, oh, that's, you know what? I erased it in my erratic erasing. Okay, so your answer here should be 1 times 3 makes 3, and 6 times 10 makes 60. And hopefully you simplified, and you get, divided by 3, a final answer of 1 over 20 for that one that you just did. Don't forget to simplify. Okay, don't forget to simplify. I'm going to move on to division, and so if you want to go back and review any multiplication, go back, but we're moving ahead. Dividing. So let me try to explain dividing fractions in the following way. Would you agree with my statement here that says to divide by 2 is the same as to take half of something? Okay, to divide by 2. If I have 4 pizzas and I divide them into 2 groups, that's going to be this group here and this group there. That's divided into 2 groups. What do I have? 2. Okay, what if I thought about it, I have 4 pizzas, like so, and I find a half of those 4 pizzas. Okay, what is half of this amount? Well, this is going to be half of that amount. And how much is it? It's 2. Okay, so hopefully you agree with my statement that to divide by 2 is the same as to take half of something. And remember we talked about of as kind of a synonym to multiply. Okay, so what is that going to look like? Instead of pictures, what is that going to look like with numbers? Okay, 4 divided by 2 is the same as 4 times a half. Okay, there's a connection here, and I'm hoping you guys can see it. I think it will be easier to see if we remember that the whole number 2 is the same as writing 2 over 1, 2 wholes. Okay, that's kind of how you take a whole number and make it look like a fraction. So instead of writing 4 divided by 2, why don't we write it like that? 4 divided by 2 over 1. Okay, and what do you guys notice here? This is a helpful relationship here that helps us divide. Okay, what do you guys notice? If this is the same amount, what can we say here? To divide by 2 is equivalent to multiply by a half. And again. Okay, what do you notice about these two numbers? Oopsie. Okay, what do you notice about these here? 2 over 1 and 1 over 2. We have a fancy math word for those. Does anyone remember? Okay, it's called the reciprocal. Okay, a reciprocal are simply two fractions that, if you look at the top and bottom, they're flipped. Okay, what was on the top is now on the bottom. What was on the bottom is now on the top. So to divide by a certain number is exactly the same as to multiply by its reciprocal, okay, or the flip of the fraction. And this may seem obvious, but it's really helpful when we divide. Okay, so let's kind of continue with this idea. 5/6 divided by 2 over 1 is the same as 5/6 times 1 over 2. Or 9 over 7 divided by 3/4 is the same as 9 over 7 times 4 over 3. Do you see that I'm flipping this fraction around? 3 over 8 is this, when you divide by 3 over 2, is the same as multiplying by 2 over 3. So this is how we actually divide fractions, ladies and gentlemen. We change it to a multiplication problem. Okay, so the general procedure here for dividing fractions is to flip this second fraction. Flip it from top to bottom or bottom to top, however you want to say it. We call this finding the reciprocal. Okay, that's just, a nice mathematical word to know. You don't have to memorize it, but it is nice to know. Change your operation to multiplication. Okay, so what was division can now be multiplication. Multiply as you would normally and simplify as you would normally. So again, I'm going to walk you through the first two problems. You can just watch because the last one you're going to do on your own. And this isn't too hard. 4 divided by a half is the same as 4 times 2 over 1. Okay, we can make 4, the number 4, look like a fraction by making it 4 over 1. And now we have 8. Okay, 8 over 1, right? The second example, remember we're going to change mixed numbers to improper fractions. 6 times 1 is 6, plus 1 is 7. Don't try and do too much in one step. Let's leave this as division while we change our to improper fractions. 7 times 2 is 14, plus 1 makes 16 over 7. Now do the flip. So 7 over 6 times 7 over 16. Ooh, those are some big numbers. Looks like I have 49 over, don't be afraid, just write it out. 6 times 6 is 36. So 96. Can I simplify that? I am not sure. I might have to look at that for a minute. Why don't you guys do example 3 and come on back and let me know what you get. All right, hopefully you have tried example 3. It looks like I have. I flipped the second fraction from 3 over 4 to 4 over 3. I changed division to multiplication. And so then I get 28 over 24. I hope you did not forget to simplify. And you have a final answer of 7 over 6. Okay? So I hope you guys are feeling good about multiplication and division. If you need to go back and write anything down or just review it, please do that now. But just a few things to summarize. And if you already wrote these down, you don't have to write them down again. But just to review, after this video, you should know how to multiply and divide fractions. Okay, the procedures. Don't forget, you always simplify. And a nice little thing is that you do not need common denominators. Okay, if you have any questions about your video, bring them to class. I will answer them for you. Have yourselves a good night. This is Mrs. G signing off.